Hello and welcome to Big Picture. I am Vishal Dahiya, and today we will take a look at the debate on the President's address to both Houses of Parliament and the reply given by the Prime Minister. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi replied to the debate in Lok Sabha on President's address to both Houses of Parliament. In his more than an hour-long reply in the lower house, Prime Minister Modi highlighted the achievements of his government's tenure, saying the focus has always been on poor with people-centric decisions. He also countered the allegations levelled by the opposition on several issues and said his government is known for honest and transparent governance. For more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests today, all of them senior journalists with me. Let me start by introducing them to you, beginning with Aditi Phadnis, political editor of Business Standard. We also have with us Mr. Prasad, senior associate editor of the Tribune, and Subhomoy Bhattacharjee, consulting editor of the Business Standard. Again, welcome all of you to Rajya Sabha TV studios. Let me begin with you, Aditi, first. Let's look at it this way. The term of this Lok Sabha is finally coming to an end. We are just weeks away from the election. A formal announcement might be happening in the first week of March or maybe the last few days of February as well. So this might be the Prime Minister's, last long, speech or reply on any particular debate in the Parliament, and he has made the most of it.
Sure, he's made the most of it. I'm not sure, I would not like to hazard a guess on whether it's the last one or the penultimate one, whatever. I think there will be one round of speeches towards the end, where thank yous will be said, etc. Yes, it is the most major important speech of the year of his tenure, as his tenure winds down. There's no doubt about that. I think he's been today's speech, in previous speeches he has been thoughtful, he has been humorous. Here he was aggressive and tough, and he blunt, and he did some very plain speaking. And then pinpointed as well. So how do you see, few highlights specifically? Well, he spoke on Rafale, he spoke on attacks on him on corruption. He spoke very frontally about attacks on undermining institutions. He spoke about achievements. I think he's helped by the fact that the Vishwa Hindu Parishad and others have decided that the issue of the Ram Mandir will now be put on the back burner. That gives the Prime Minister the leeway and the freedom to basically showcase the achievements of his government before the election, rather than focusing on issues relating to Mandir, Masjid and those kind of things, which I think he did not want from the beginning, but was in between put in a kind of a dilemma because so many people flagged this as the most important issue. So that is one thing that's been settled, and that was very evident from his speech today. He did not mention the Mandir, he did not mention any of the other issues that are contentious. He spoke about his government and governance.
Mr. Prasad, as Aditi is pointing out, that this was a speech about achievements of NDA government's tenure, as well as specific pinpointed counters to the allegations of the opposition parties on several issues.
Well, of course, this is a wonderful opportunity for him to clear the air, because the last so many months in particular, the Congress has been very aggressive in attacking Prime Minister on many issues, more so specifically on Rafale in particular. They're talking of jobs, they're talking of agriculture districts, they're talking of many other issues which they think, demonetization, other issues which they think have had found traction during the 3 assembly elections, or 5 assembly states elections that concluded in December, and also try and build up an atmosphere where you go into Lok Sabha elections in a few months from now. Now, the best form of defense is, they say, is attack. So I think that's the tactic that was very clear. And here was an opportunity, because if you notice this, some of these elements were already figuring in the Rashtrapati's speech to the joint session of Parliament, of both Houses of Parliament, because that was basically a summation of the 5 years of what the Modi government was and what it could achieve and what more it can offer to the people. Then some elements got translated into the budget, what was an interim budget, but certain segments which were unrolled which the finance minister himself acknowledged were not conventional, but he made some pointed references to what was done in the past also. So today comes the conclusion in one way. for almost 15 minutes short of 2 hours, we had the Prime Minister holding floor, telling, so he took his time, first to attack the opposition on issues which he has been under attack, try and counter them point by point, issue by issue, subject by subject, also attack the Congress party, its dynasty and how it views the politics of the country, not once but 3 or 4 times, including suggesting that he is actually fulfilling Mahatma Gandhi's dream, who had suggested the Congress party should wind up after, and he says, why blame me? I am only trying to fulfill in 150 years. So he used he brought that into it. So these all elements very clearly show that he wanted to send his message across.
Okay.
And this was the platform. Because tomorrow we don't know whether the Rajya Sabha will complete the motion of thanks to President address and there will be yet another opportunity or not. So this was an available opportunity, and very rightly he made use of it.
Okay, well, as Aditi said, let's not hazard a guess on whether or not it is the last one or the penultimate one. But yes, this was one, speech, one reply wherein he handled most of the issues, including the political ones as well. Let's now, start picking up on one by one and try and see what exactly was the Prime Minister trying to convey. Subhomoy, let us begin with the economic aspect of it. The Prime Minister dwelled a lot on, the jobs, the demonetization aspect, economy per se. Over the last 4.5 years or so during the NDA's tenure was, or rather has been, a major thrust area for this government.
Sure, and I wasn't surprised that he was picking up on those. And it's interesting that the narrative today that the Prime Minister employed was more in response to what the attack has been rather than his own agenda, which would have been the starting point of, say, this government in 2014. So that's, I think, is quite a shift, because today jobs dominate. Today issues of poverty came up. That's a very interesting thing that did come up. Also, the issues about corruption. These were sort of the government had said that we had achieved closure, but they are again open, and he is again going on into it. So basically, the last 1 year hasn't been very kind to him and the party, and in terms of the numbers that have been coming out, if you look at it in that terms, then this government's, the ability, as they said in 2014 and now, those figures are not exactly adding up fully.
Okay.
So it is a government that is now going to the populace for the election and trying to say that if this is where the economy has moved, so why is it that it's moved only this much? And that, I think, was what he was trying to make it very clear.
Wherein he said that from 11th position, India has come to become the 6th largest economy in the last 4.5 years. So that's the nutshell, basically. That's the gist.
Yeah, sort of. As I said, that at one level, the economy is obviously, India is now a very powerful economy in the world, in the world stage. USA, India, China, that's how it ranks up. But the big thing is that in that context, this government, when it had come up, had basically this, was trying to put wings to the Indian economy. Now, that in certain respects doesn't seem like having been achieved. So, what is it that has been hobbling it was what the Prime Minister was today trying to explain.
Okay.
And I suppose that's evident because this is the structure, this is the template which his partymen would be taking to the elections at every place.
To the people, to the voters.
Yeah, because these would be the issues. So, issues like, say, smart cities, issues like Swachhta, issues like other feel-good themes didn't feature that much today. It was more about, as I said, what the opposition had been raising and replying to those. So there's a bit of a change in what this government is now talking about rather than what they had started off with. Okay. And I think that's a very interesting change.
Okay, Aditi, economy and politics, all of us know, are very closely intertwined. And when we talk about this kind of thrust on the economic aspect, how do you see this translating politically for the Prime Minister as well as for his party? And as Subhomoy said, that this is going to be a template for his partymen to go to the voters with the kind of issues on which they will, or they can rather, go ahead and vote during the elections.
Vishal, let me tell you a little story. I am very proud of the fact that I belong to a newspaper. The Business Standard broke the story about the level of joblessness being at a 45-year-old high. Matlab, in 45 years, there have not been so many losses of jobs as there were in the last 1 year. And the Prime Minister, everybody noticed the story, the opposition made a big deal out of it, everybody noted it. I know that when I was sitting in the press gallery upstairs in the Lok Sabha on the budget day, one of the Congress MPs got photocopies made of this report and walked across and handed one to Piyush Goyal, who paid no attention to it, and handed it to Mr. Gadkari, and the other one to the Prime Minister, who didn't even look at it and put it under his table. Now, he might not have looked at it then, but today he was referring to it repeatedly, not by referring to it directly, but by producing data which seem to be questioning the assertions made in that report.
Okay.
Two very well-known world-class economists resigned from that committee because they felt that the government had not done justice to them by not making that report public.
So this was his movement to go ahead and counter, put his counter view.
So I would tend to agree with Subhomoy that he is in reactive mode, and he is giving his party men a signal that if you want to defend the government, these are the things on which you have to defend it.
Okay.
He could not ignore the issues of jobs because naturally, I mean, it's a central issue for everybody, for all voters. And once again, I say that because my newspaper printed this report and because it was the first a signal or first sort of empirical evidence that something that we all knew was true, but only guessed and only had anecdotal evidence to suggest, we now had factual basis to defend.
Another thing, Mr. Prasad, I would like to bring you in here is the social sector schemes. And you know, if you look at the interim budget which was presented, the kind of focus, the narrative which had been, started from the farmers issue, the way, the scheme was announced, and then for the unorganized sector workers. So in that particular area also, there seems to be a lot of thrust, looking at different segments of people, bringing in schemes for them, having a safety net specifically.
Well, one thing is very clear. I mean, before I answer to the question to what he said, when in 2014, it was easier for the BJP and to attack a government which was there and offer a solution to what it was. 5 years down the line, when they go to seek the vote again, the Prime Minister, his government's work will obviously be on the table. People are going to look at it. So today, that distinction was also made by the Prime Minister in his speech when he kept referring to 55 years versus 5 years, or rather 55 years versus 55 months. So something to that effect, to kind of say, okay, look here, you're blaming us for, look what we did for you. Look how the economy progressed. Look how the roads were made. Look, so many sectors, infrastructure, whatever, the job data that he talked of, unorganized sector and so on and so forth. So obviously this was because you have to go with your work now. So that was very clear. The template was there for everyone to see. To other issues, sectors wise, he had to break it down for you. He had to break it down to people, and also as Aditi was telling, for tomorrow the BJP and its Karyakartas to go out on the field and say, when asked by people or whoever they are, ki isme kya kiya aapne, usme kya kiya, so they will have a very solid answer for them to tell them. So this is something very clear, and this started when the Prime Minister actually gave an interview to a television. If you remember, there was a few weeks ago, there was a televised interview. It was given to an agency. From there onwards, it was available for his own government and his people and people around the government and supporters to look what the issues which are of contentious, issues on which the opposition is constantly raising the pitch, making it shrill. This is the answer.
Okay.
And this is how, when it comes from the topmost person heading the government, they know what kind of narrative you can build.
Okay, one more aspect, Subhomoy, and from the issues perspective and the sector specific as well, is the infrastructure sector. There's been a lot of focus in the last 1.5 years on that as well, be it building roads or building airports or bringing in schemes like the Udan scheme, connecting people. That's something which also seems to be being highlighted. It was there in the presidential address as well, and it was there in Prime Minister's reply as well in several forms, in several ways.
One of the things that this government has done very well is asset creation. That is something which it's definitely worked quite well because so if you look at the housing construction, if you look at the road construction, if you look at even in terms of the health schemes, which I would say is basically as a part of the asset creation model, those have worked very well. So similarly, the infrastructure sectors, where it is, because those are also basically about creating assets, it has performed well. And those are definitely some things which the government would want to talk about when it goes to the public. Those are visible also. If you look at it in terms of the numbers coming up, there will be slippages. Electricity, for instance, gas connection that has been working along.
Housing for urban poor and rural poor.
Housing is already there, and roads. These are the areas where it has been coming along. So it is about what are the areas. So if one looks at the government's work in the economy, these sectors, these areas have worked out well. What wouldn't be working out was the other area. So it's a question of how do you balance the two. And remember, asset creation in a low per capita income economy doesn't seem very useful initially. It will after some time, because the people won't have the money to maintain those assets. So after you give the first gas connection, the second gas connection becomes difficult because that comes through money, income that you generate. Similarly, in terms of healthcare, if a person is getting 2 lakh, and typically if the budget goes slightly above it, the cost, what happens? So that is a challenge that the Indian economy poses, simply because of the fact that it's a $2,000 economy. So you won't really have that much amount of extras with anybody. So that is where, and obviously you would expect the opposition to challenge you on that. And that is where the government has to therefore create a system of income generation to back up the asset. As of now, in most countries, major, even in USA, for instance, the work that they picked up was housing, because it was easier than doing a job creation. Because that works better. So, but definitely, to its credit, they've worked substantially on the asset side, and that is something that they would need. I mean, that will really be banking on in the run up to in the next few months.
Aditi, all of us know, and back to the politics again, because now it's all roads are leading to the Lok Sabha polls 2019, and that's being billed as the battle royale election, the election which everybody will be looking forward to. Now, all these statements which are coming in, including the Prime Minister's reply as well, and from the opposition, the reactions which are coming in, or during their speeches or other allegations, this is going to be a phase wherein it will be claims and counterclaims. So in that aspect, do you see that the Prime Minister has set that template right for his party men, that this is what the government has done, go to the people, make them understand that this is what we have done and this is what we can do if we vote it back to power for the next 5 years?
Well, roughly yes. Of course, in the election, local issues are also do play a role. If an MP, for instance, can achieve the stoppage of a railway, of a train in his village or in his area, then that's a big political victory for him. Similarly, if he has managed to create an airport, if he has lobbied enough here to make sure that his constituency gets an airport, land prices will go up, there will be overall prosperity and development. That's a big issue. So for in such situations, it really doesn't matter who the Prime Minister is. People are committed to re-voting the MP back in. But in places where these are not issues, people do have to rely on the image and the communicative abilities of the Prime Minister to get re-elected again. We have to wait and see. There are lots of slips between the cup and the lip, and we have to see how many MPs are going to be repeated, how many are going to contest for a second time, how many are going to be knocked out of the race, and others are going to replace him. So that is something that we have to
remains to be. Mr. Prasad, do you agree that what Aditi is also pointing out, and Subhomoy is saying sector-wise, specifically if you look at the narrative which the Prime Minister has set in is, for his party workers and partymen and to the people at large, is the performance is a mixture, or rather a cocktail of performance of his government plus the brand Modi image.
Both. After all, he came on brand Modi, and he promised Modi Sarkar, minimum government, maximum governance. And these are all of us know the election symbol. Today too, he refers to some of them in his speech in his reply in Parliament. So these are because people are obviously going to pull you back to say, okay, what do you do on this? You promised us this. What do you do on this? So it's but natural that the Prime Minister, as the head of the government, has to tell people, largely people. Partymen will get included in that, but first and foremost is the people for which, and he promised towards the end, he makes a point that he was elected to get rid of corruption, and that he is going after the bad eggs. I mean, he's all those people who have run away from, and he's compares it to some of the misdeeds that happened in the previous government or the previous regime of the Congress party. So he kind of says that, he reminds people that why did you elect me in the first place? You elected me in the first place because at that point of time corruption was a major issue. He refers to the Commonwealth Games. So this is constantly reminding that the purpose for which he was elected at that point of time, that principle is being achieved largely because many of the steps he has taken, the hard decisions his government has taken to go after the defaulters. So, he's make this. So I think he's also obviously telling them, the attacks notwithstanding, the primary purpose for which it was elected remains in place.
Okay. Subhomoy, the concluding comment from you. The field is all set and the Prime Minister has made the first, rolled the first ball by listing the achievements.
Absence of corruption is not a very comfortable thing in a low per capita income country, and essentially what I agree with what Kev is saying about the point about this corruption thing. So because that is what moves elections in lots of places, especially as Aditi is saying, where there is no tangible benefits otherwise. So there he is therefore falling back on that issue of corruption, that I promise clean government, because that was the mantra of 2014.
The actions taken against black money.
Now, no matter how much you've done on asset creation or on other things, people still, at least most of Indian politicians would tend to think that it's corruption which moves, which I think is right, because the opposition also thinks that corruption is what moves, and that is why the harping on corruption issue. So it will be the corruption issue that will dominate, I have a sense, in this election. How it will dominate is what we have seen Mr. Modi setting the terms for his party. Whether it will be the opposition which will decide the corruption on those lines, that's for them to speak up in the next few months.
Okay, so clearly, as our panelists are pointing out, that the field is all set, and on 13th will be the last day of the last session of 16th Lok Sabha. Per se, the term of the NDA government will come to an end. The Prime Minister, in his reply, has sort of given a template to his party and the voters as large as to what his government has done and what is achievable in the next term as well if his party is voted back to power. We'll come back again tomorrow with different topic and a different set of guests. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.